Ronan Vale arrived in Mapleford with a modest suitcase, a polite smile, and a story that made him seem harmless. He claimed he wanted a peaceful life after leaving a troubled past in South America. No one doubted him, especially when he quietly married Elaine Harper, a 55-year-old widow known in town for her gentle nature and her love of gardening. People found the pairing unusual, but Elaine had always tried to help those who seemed lost, and Ronan appeared grateful for her kindness. Their small wedding passed without attention, and for a while, life on Riverbend Street looked normal. Then Elaine began to fade from sight. First she skipped her weekly visits to the community center, then she stopped tending the flowers she cherished. Her mailbox filled with envelopes. Packages piled near the porch. A neighbor noticed the curtains were always closed now, even on sunny days. When volunteers stopped by, Ronan claimed Elaine was traveling to receive treatment for a lingering illness, but no one ever saw her leave. The story might have gone unquestioned longer if the smells hadn't started. They appeared late at night, chemical and sharp, floating from the locked garage behind the Harper home. Some chalked it up to cleaning supplies, others convinced themselves they were imagining it. Ronan had recently placed a new padlock on the garage door, but he told a delivery driver he was protecting tools from being stolen. Weeks passed with no sign of Elaine. Her sister finally grew alarmed when none of her calls were returned. She reported her missing, and officers were sent to the home for what they assumed would be a routine check. Ronan stayed calm as he explained his wife's supposed medical trip, even showing recent emails that appeared to come from Elaine's account. But detectives noticed her bank card had not been used in over a month, her phone was disconnected, and the tone of the emails did not match her typical writing. They returned with more questions, and this time asked about the locked garage. Ronan quickly claimed the lock was broken. The hesitation was enough. A warrant was issued. When police cut through the padlock and lifted the door, a wave of stale air rolled out. The garage was dim except for a single flickering bulb. Dust coated the floor. In the far corner sat a large chest freezer sealed tightly with industrial tape. Officers noticed the extension cord powering it and the faint but unmistakable odor drifting from within. They opened it and found Elaine inside, confirming the community's worst fear. Investigators searched the rest of the garage and discovered a pile of forged documents, financial records, immigration paperwork, and a black notebook filled with step-by-step plans. Ronan had listed criteria for selecting widows, instructions for controlling their assets, and timelines for applying for residency benefits. Elaine was his first target. Before the police could process the scene, Ronan attempted to flee the neighborhood but was caught 2 blocks away. Digital forensics later revealed an accomplice abroad who had helped him prepare the scheme, making it clear that the marriage had never been about companionship. It had been a carefully designed crime, and the garage had held the secret the whole town feared to imagine. Investigators moved quickly after the discovery in the garage, determined to understand how such a calculated crime had taken place unnoticed for so long. The first step was to reconstruct Ronan Vale's life before Mapleford, but almost immediately, they hit a wall of half-truths and missing records. His immigration documents, once thought legitimate, now appeared to be part of a larger network of forgeries. The addresses listed on his applications were either abandoned buildings or homes that had been vacant for years. Every job he claimed to have held had no record of him. It was as if he had appeared in the country only months earlier, shaped by paperwork created to fool the system. Detectives began interviewing residents on Riverbend Street, gathering stories that now seemed sinister in hindsight. One neighbor recalled seeing Ronan hauling large plastic containers into the garage at odd hours. Another mentioned hearing a heavy dragging sound one night, though she dismissed it at the time. A delivery driver remembered Ronan insisting all packages be left at the far end of the porch instead of handed to anyone directly. Taken separately, each memory sounded trivial, but together they painted a picture of a man who had carefully controlled every inch of his environment. At the police station, Ronan remained expressionless during questioning. He refused to answer most inquiries, staring at the table or closing his eyes as if bored by the process. Officers searched his electronic devices, discovering encrypted folders and deleted files that hinted at months of preparation. His browser history contained searches related to identity theft, property transfers, and ways to manipulate digital communication. The emails that appeared to be from Elaine were traced back to a foreign server, suggesting someone else had helped create them. The most alarming detail surfaced when agents analyzed the notebook found in the garage. The entries were written with precision, outlining a long-term plan to marry vulnerable women with stable financial assets. Each page detailed how to study a target's habits, isolate them, and mimic their digital presence long enough to secure property rights and residency. Elaine's name appeared only once, under a list titled "Suitable Candidates," with notes describing her solitary lifestyle and modest savings. Investigators also found a second list containing names of other widows in nearby towns. None of them knew Ronan, but the notes showed he had observed their routines, visited their neighborhoods, and collected private information that he had no legitimate way of obtaining. As authorities worked to untangle the network behind his forged documents, they discovered frequent international money transfers linked to someone using the name Mira Tolsin, believed to be coordinating operations from outside the country. The transfers stopped 3 days before Ronan's arrest, suggesting the accomplice sensed danger. While police issued alerts for Mira, she seemed to vanish without a trace, leaving investigators to theorize she had fled long before officers reached her last known address. Back in Mapleford, Elaine's home became a crime scene filled with silent reminders of her final weeks. Neighbors gathered outside, stunned by how close they had lived to such deception, struggling to accept that the quiet man they had greeted politely was part of something far more calculated than anyone had imagined. As the investigation deepened, federal agents joined the local police to map out every movement Ronan Vale had made since entering the country. What initially looked like the work of a single opportunist quickly grew into something far more structured. Analysts traced his earliest arrival to a coastal city where he had lived under a different alias, renting a small apartment using forged identification. The landlord there described a tenant who paid on time but avoided social interaction and kept heavy curtains drawn even during daylight. Surveillance footage from nearby stores showed Ronan purchasing tools, containers, locks, and cleaning supplies months before he ever reached Mapleford, proving his scheme was in motion long before Elaine Harper encountered him. As officers pieced together these fragments, they noticed how Ronan had traveled across multiple states, spending only short periods in each location. He never stayed long enough for anyone to become suspicious, yet he left behind traces of research, property records, public documents, and names of individuals who fit his criteria. Investigators found evidence he had attended support groups, community gatherings, and online forums, not for personal healing but to identify people living alone who had no close relatives nearby. Elaine had simply been one of several profiles he had studied. Digital forensics uncovered encrypted communication between Ronan and the elusive Mira Tolsin, revealing that she acted as a coordinator for a larger fraudulent enterprise. She sent him data on vulnerable Americans, helped him create identities, and provided instructions on how to maintain a facade of legitimacy. Messages revealed that Ronan had been assigned multiple possible targets, but Elaine was selected because her financial records indicated a stable retirement account and a house in her sole name. More chilling was the discovery of messages referencing a second phase of operations that had not yet begun. This phase involved transferring physical assets overseas through intermediaries. Had Elaine's disappearance gone unnoticed, the plan would likely have succeeded without anyone realizing the true purpose behind the marriage. Meanwhile, Mapleford struggled with the unsettling reality that a calculated crime had grown unnoticed in their quiet community. Rumors spread quickly through the streets. Some residents admitted to feeling guilty for ignoring warning signs, the sudden padlock, the chemical smell, the drawn curtains. Others questioned how anyone could disguise such intentions beneath polite greetings and harmless smiles. The investigation brought national attention to the town, drawing reporters who sought details about the suburban home that concealed a criminal operation. But the most crucial breakthrough came from an unexpected source, a retired software engineer who lived 2 blocks from Elaine's home. He contacted authorities after noticing unusual wireless signals months earlier. At the time, he assumed they came from a neighbor experimenting with new devices. But after hearing news of the case, he alerted police. The signals led analysts to discover a hidden communication hub inside Elaine's attic, built by Ronan to mask outgoing data. The equipment allowed him to exchange information without detection, rerouting signals through international servers before reaching Mira. This discovery shifted the direction of the investigation, proving Ronan had not only planned Elaine's death but had also integrated her home into a larger network. It became clear that his marriage had never been about personal gain alone. He had intended to turn her property into a safe base for long-term criminal operations. With the attic devices seized and the digital trail expanding, investigators realized they were no longer dealing with a simple case of marriage fraud. They were uncovering the edges of a hidden system that reached far beyond Mapleford, and Ronan Vale had been only one thread in a much larger web. The discovery of the attic communication hub pushed investigators to broaden their search beyond digital clues. They began examining every room of Elaine Harper's home with renewed focus, treating the house not only as a crime scene but as a potential operations center. The basement revealed an arrangement of storage bins labeled with cryptic symbols that investigators later connected to financial accounts under false identities. Shelves held small encrypted drives tucked between ordinary household items. It became evident that Ronan had used the property to store data and tools that supported the broader network he was involved in. While authorities analyzed the items, they also questioned how Ronan had managed to transform the home so efficiently without attracting suspicion. It became clear that he chose victims who lived quiet, isolated lives. Elaine's grief after her husband's passing had made her easy to manipulate, and Ronan had taken advantage of her kindness with ruthless precision. Federal agents tracked his financial movements next, uncovering a series of shell companies registered under fabricated names. Many of the accounts showed small but steady transfers to locations scattered across Europe and South America. These transfers were disguised as payments for freelance work, but deeper examination revealed that the companies had no real operations. Instead, they served as conduits for funds acquired through fraud. Some accounts linked directly to individuals known to facilitate trafficking and identity theft. With each discovery, the scale of the operation grew more disturbing. What seemed at first like a targeted crime motivated by personal gain now appeared connected to international schemes that exploited vulnerable individuals around the world. While analysts continued to unravel financial trails, field agents pursued leads related to Mira Tolsin. One informant reported that a woman matching her description had been seen at a border crossing days before Ronan's arrest. Another source claimed she had boarded a cargo vessel using a forged passport. These conflicting reports made it difficult to determine whether she was still in the country, but investigators believed someone had warned her the operation was compromised. This suspicion deepened when they examined Ronan's seized devices and found evidence of an emergency communication system. It appeared he had the ability to send distress signals or coded updates that could reach Mira within minutes. Experts concluded that the system had been used on the day officers first visited the house. It was likely the moment detectives asked to enter the garage that Ronan quietly alerted her to potential danger, giving her time to escape. Back in Mapleford, the community wrestled with shock and unease. The Harper property, once a symbol of warmth and routine, was now associated with criminal networks and hidden agendas. Neighbors gathered in small groups, discussing how someone so dangerous had blended into their quiet town. Parents began locking doors earlier, and local officials organized informational meetings about identifying fraud and manipulation. Elaine's extended family visited the property under police supervision, collecting personal items and trying to understand how their loved one had been drawn into a stranger's elaborate plan. For them, the investigation brought no comfort, only more questions about how someone could orchestrate such a calculated betrayal. As authorities prepared the case against Ronan, they realized they were only beginning to understand the full extent of the network he served. Every new clue revealed deeper layers of planning that stretched across borders and involved individuals far beyond their reach. The discovery in the garage had opened the door to a much larger story, one that would demand more time, more resources, and more answers than anyone in Mapleford had ever expected. Investigators moved their focus toward building a solid case for trial, but even as they gathered evidence, unexpected details continued to emerge. Analysts reviewing the communication hub from the attic uncovered a series of encrypted logs that mapped Ronan Vale's movements and tasks for nearly 2 years. Each entry corresponded to a code, and when decoded, the messages revealed orders sent by unknown handlers. Ronan had been instructed where to travel, which communities to observe, and when to create new identities. He had followed these directives with methodical precision, leaving almost no trace until he reached Mapleford. The logs confirmed that his marriage to Elaine was not only premeditated but also approved by the network that had guided him. The chilling realization was that Ronan was not a leader in the operation but a controlled participant who had been groomed and directed by others. As the trial date neared, prosecutors assembled a timeline demonstrating how Ronan manipulated Elaine, falsified documents, and attempted to stage her disappearance. Digital timestamps from the attic devices aligned perfectly with bank transfers and forged messages. Forensic evidence from the garage freezer supported the theory that Ronan had acted alone in carrying out the crime, but not in planning it. Meanwhile, the search for Mira Tolsin continued aggressively. International agencies grew involved, combing through travel records and tracking passport fraud cases. While they found several aliases believed to belong to her, no current location could be confirmed. Each lead went cold as soon as agents reached it, suggesting she had a well-funded system helping her evade capture. During pre-trial hearings, Ronan remained disturbingly calm. His lack of emotion unsettled even experienced officers. Psychological evaluations described him as detached, calculating, and fully aware of his actions. When offered opportunities to provide information in exchange for leniency, he remained silent. Experts suspected he feared retaliation from the network if he cooperated. His silence strengthened the theory that the organization behind him was far larger and more dangerous than initially believed. Prosecutors prepared to proceed without his testimony, relying instead on the overwhelming evidence recovered from the property. Across Mapleford, the slow return to normal life was overshadowed by a lingering sense of vulnerability. Community leaders implemented neighborhood watch programs, and local authorities hosted seminars on recognizing warning signs of exploitation. Residents still struggled to understand how someone so dangerous had lived among them without raising alarms. The Harper home, once a place filled with gardening tools and quiet routines, was eventually purchased by the town and converted into a community resource center dedicated to supporting isolated individuals, an effort to honor Elaine's memory and prevent similar tragedies. When the trial finally began, the courtroom was packed. The prosecution presented weeks of evidence detailing Ronan's calculated steps, the forged identities, the coded communications, the financial transfers, and the manipulation that allowed him to take control of Elaine's life. The jury reached a verdict swiftly. Ronan was found guilty of murder, fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. He received a sentence that ensured he would never walk free again. Yet even with the conviction, the case felt unfinished. Investigators still had no answers about Mira's whereabouts or the larger network she led. The encrypted logs suggested additional operatives scattered across the country, waiting for new orders.